Welcome to Diary of a Sheep Dairy Farmer, where we talk all things dairy sheep, from breeding to lambing to milking and everything in between and outside. I'm your host, Becca, owner, operator, and glorified farmhand of Hidden Hollow Sheep Dairy. Welcome back to another day of dairy sheep. As promised, today we are talking about rams. If you know me or follow me, you know I have a ram obsession. I collect rams like some women collect shoes. There is just something about rams that make me happy. My rams are pretty friendly. I work with them from day one to knock out the dumbness, ramminess, stubbornness, maleness out of them. Call it what you want. The last thing I want on my farm is a ram I cannot trust. One I have to take a bat into the pen with and keep an eye on at all times. One I have to worry about if anyone besides my husband or I feed, water, or move him. Have I had bratty rams before? Of course. I think we all have had that one or maybe two rams that needed to go to freezer camp. In my case, it was a younger ram, just about a 2-year-old, who was getting a little too big for his britches. He was picking fights with all the other rams for no reason. Beautiful black ram, one of the very first rams we bred and raised on our farm from our own ram and ewes, just as we were deciding if we should keep him through the breeding season and then ship him to freezer camp. He died. My husband thinks he had a brain aneurysm, and that is what made him be such a jerk for the last month before he fell over. It almost would have been comical had it not been so sad. I didn't have the number of rams then that I do now, so losing one had me panicking a bit, unsure I would have enough rams to cover all the ewes that year. I don't know about you guys, but we have a lot of fires going on here in Idaho. And the smoke is, it is getting to me. I never had asthma growing up, but apparently I have grown into asthma as an adult. And the smoke is just wreaking havoc in my lungs. So I apologize for the scratchy, wheezy sound of my voice today. I have a huge glass of water with me. So hopefully I can make it through this whole thing without sounding like I am about to lose my voice completely. I do have a 2021 Ram, my Bon Jovi. He was headed down that road if he hadn't got his head turned around on straight. He had a habit of trying to butt my hand every time I was petting one of the other Rams. It took a lot of correction and firm handling, but we worked it out, and now he pays attention to me when I'm in the pen. He never comes running up like some of the other rams wanting my attention. He waits his turn, waiting until he knows he has my full attention, like my full body turned toward him, before he will approach me. He's not a lean on you type of ram like our old man Ace was. Ace was a sidler. He would sidle up to you very carefully, then lean his full weight onto your side while you gave him pets and scratches. Bon Jovi is more of a thanks for the attention, now I'll be on my way and watch these others for you type of ram. Not quite as good as a watchdog as my Glenn was. Now that was a ram I would have traded all the others for 10 of. Glenn was the ram if I was in the pasture and the others started getting a little rowdy for whatever reason, he would put himself between me and them. This ram bonded to me from day one. He unfortunately got his head stuck in one of the squares of a ranch panel and choked himself overnight. I have never been so sad and so angry at the same time. Bon Jovi took a lot of work to get him over his dumbness. I never had to take a bat or a stick to him. That's just not my way with animals, though I'm not going to lie and say there weren't times that had there been something in reach, I wouldn't have used it on his stubborn butt because he was stubborn. Firm correction usually works wonders with my rams because I am breeding them for calmer, gentler dispositions. And by firmer corrections, it's usually a grip them on the snout and just hold and kind of shake their head. That's not what this podcast is about, is to how to train your ram, but I have been known to roundhouse a few rams in my day who have ducked head and tried to take me. So yeah, it's I'm not a throw your ram type of person. You see all the time, oh, if your ram comes at you, just grab him by the head and throw him, and or tackle him, or whatever people are telling you to do these days. I don't even know. I usually skip those posts and those comments, and I have my way with my sheep. It works fairly well for me. I am not a animal trainer by any means, so I'm not going to tell you how to train your animals. What works for me works for me. It will not work for everyone. I could go on and on about my rams all day, all week, in fact. My rams hold a special place in my heart. I work with them daily. I handle them daily, at least with pets, and get loved on, which is, unless I'm milking my ewes every single day, doesn't happen with the ewes. They definitely don't get handled near as much as the rams, which I think is part of why the rams seem to be friendlier half the time. And I probably wouldn't have such a flippant attitude toward my rams, so to speak, if I hadn't started off with dealing with bulls and stallions. We had some good bulls on the farm when we ran cattle, like docile enough my kid could climb all over them, and our 2 pygmy goats at the time used to play king of the hill on them. And we had some real jerks that we wondered why we even kept them as long as we did. Those were the ones my husband wouldn't let me get near. Our stallion we bred and raised. He knew his job and he was good at it. I could go on and on about him. He also died of what we suspect was an aneurysm. My daughter had fed him, and within 3 minutes he was dead. Broke my heart. This really was the start of the end of our horses. He never kicked or bit except for one time. We were taking him to a mare for him to breed, literally moving him from his pen outside into the barn where the mare was waiting. Now, I don't know if he hated this mare. It was an outside mare. It wasn't one of our own, so he didn't know her. I don't know if he was just that worked up about getting to breed, but at the sight of her, he lashed out and tried to bite her. Only my arm was in the way. Never in my life have I seen a horse so contrite and apologetic. I don't think he got that mare bred. He was so sad at what he had done. He immediately dropped his head and placed it on my chest. That horse would not move. I could not get him into the pen, into the round pen that we had set up with that mare, until I told him it was okay, gave him lots of pets and reassurance. I had to call my husband and say, you have to come help me move Chip. He won't move for me. And he's like, what do you mean he won't move for you? That horse will do anything for you. I said, no. He accidentally bit me, and now he's not moving. So it took 2 of us to get him in with that mare because he was so apologetic. First and last time I have ever had a horse apologize to me. I think if I hadn't started out with bigger and pushier, sometimes meaner animals, I would probably be a little more wary of my rams. A lot of people want to know if it is worth it to keep a ram. And personally, I say yes, but that's just me. I have plenty of room for 20 head of rams. You may not have enough room for 1. What are some things you need to know about keeping your own ram? For starters, they can be jerks. If they have no respect for you, they can and will butt you and land you in the hospital. You will need a place to keep your ram, possibly separately from your ewes. Wild dairy sheep are normally seasonal breeders and shouldn't come into heat any other time than from, on average, there are always exceptions, from about September to March without some artificial or hormonal help. Oopses still happen. You sometimes get lucky and have a ewe that will breed out of season. We used to run our rams with our ewes 100% of the time, especially when we only had 3 rams and about 60 head of ewes. And then we had some ewes that had some Katahdin in them, and unknowingly bought some ewes that were heavy on the Dorper side, and the rams began to cover them in the off season. And lambs were coming when we didn't want them. We had to do a heavy cull of these all-time breeders and start separating our rams out of the flock. Now we've gotten most of that, the Dorper, the Katahdin, out of our flock. But we do have some of our dairy sheep that will breed out of season. So we still keep the rams separated when we are not breeding. If you only have one ram and don't keep him with your ewes all the time, he is going to need a friend. Sheep are flock animals. They do not do well on their own. So now you are probably going to be looking for at least a wether to keep him company, which means room enough for 2 animals, not just your ram. Another option to keeping your own ram is to co-own a ram. Let's say you are really lucky and you and your friend down the way a bit both have dairy sheep. Let's be honest, rams are not cheap. A good ram with exceptional breeding, records to prove it, records to prove mom's milking past, etc., could easily run you $2,000 or more. Even a run-of-the-mill ram with just its own mom's records, nothing super fancy for breeding, will be around $500. And speaking as someone who pays closer to that $2,000 mark for rams, this is an investment. That ram is going to cover at least 20, if not 40 ewes in his first year for me. Let's say he does cover those 40 ewes. That's an average of 80 lambs, if I'm lucky. Luckier would be for have-to-be boys that will get sold at market, and in his first year out, I've already gained back his cost plus some and still have plenty of years left. But that initial cost can hurt the pocketbook. So if you and your friend go in half each and are still both able to use him to cover your ewes, be it 5 or 50, that will help alleviate some of the sticker shock. Especially if your friend is able to house that ram for you during the off-breeding season, even if you need to pay her in a couple of lambs for your half of feed or however you decide to work it out. Another option is AI, artificial insemination. This one can get expensive and the results vary. Conception rates via AI can be anywhere from 60 to 80%, which isn't that great considering the price attached to AI. Ordering frozen dairy sheep semen isn't easy or cheap. It can run upward of about $300 for a single straw. A few years back, I went through the Dairy Sheep Association of North America's semen importation program, where they brought semen in through France, I think it was. I can't remember what the cost of each straw was, but between the semen and the vet that came out to do the AI, it costs about $100 per ewe, which gets pretty pricey. One straw covers 1 ewe. And I bought 10 straws for 10 ewes. It wasn't as bad as it could have been price-wise doing it that way, but of our 10 ewes, we had 3 that missed, so we only had a 70% success rate. Compare that to buying a ram. $1,000 got me 7 ewes covered and 12 lambs born. If I had put that $1,000 into a ram who could have covered 40 head of ewes, I would have been money ahead. However, doing the AI brought me better Lacone genetics into my flock. I had lots of East Frisian influence in my sheep and had some Lucane that I had lucked into, but by buying the 100% Lucane semen through Desana from France, I was able to up my Lucane genetics and get better milking genes into my ewes. So that is something to consider when looking into AI as well. Sometimes it's not always about the money, but what you can gain in the long run. Okay, last option on our list today is to rent a ram. I see this more and more, and I used to cringe at the thought of anyone renting a ram to cover their flock. I made the comment to my husband one day, and he had a good point, saying it's not that different than when we took our mares to get bred by someone else's stallion. We would get the mares tested to make sure they didn't have any issues that could be passed on to the stud, and the stallion owner would have a clean bill of health as well. It's common practice in the horse world, so why do we cringe when someone wants to do it in the sheep world? I think part of it has to do with the ram goes to the ewes. So you would be giving up your control of your ram for that month and hoping that person would be caring for him just as you would. And second, if you only have 1 or 2 rams, that's an investment that if something happens to him, you are out that ram. But I don't think it is a bad idea. I do it. I have a friend down the way that borrows a ram every couple years to cover some of her ewes. For me, it's a neighborly thing to do, so I don't charge her anything, though usually she'll bring me a lamb or 2 in exchange at weaning time. She does have meat sheep, so I tend to look for the meatiest looking ram in my bunch, and one she usually tries to cover her first time ewes, so I try to find one that not only is meaty looking, but is also throws smaller lambs just to help her out in that aspect. So I'm not taking anything away from my own breeding group because I have so many rams by sending her one. But maybe you charge a flat $500 breeding fee for sending your ram over, or you charge so much per ewe, per head, depending on how many ewes this person is going to be breeding, or you get pick of the litter, so to speak, at weaning time from that group of lambs. There are so many options when it comes to rams and covering your ewes. Breeding season is right around the corner, at least for me. We'll start our early breeding in about 45 days from now. I just need to get through this August lambing if it happens. If you follow me on YouTube, you know I am not holding my breath that this is going to be a bumper crop of lambs. At this point, I'm just hoping for 10 ewes to lamb, but I'll keep you updated. As always, I appreciate you being here and thank you for your support. I would be ever so grateful if you would leave a review or share this podcast with your dairy sheep loving friends, anything to get the word out. As always, you can follow me on Instagram at Diary of a Sheep Dairy Farmer. And if you want to follow the chaos around the farm, you can find me on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok at Hidden Hollow Sheep Dairy. If there are any topics you are interested in, or if you are interested in being a guest on the podcast, please let me know. You can reach out to me at hollowIdaho@gmail.com. Thanks for being here, guys. We'll talk to you again next week.